Hey, did you ever consider an audio version of Ambien?
We are controlling transmission. We are controlling transmission.
So this is the intro. Steve will get really mad if we talk during this part. I try never to speak during this part.
During the intro.
Transmission.
Correct.
Yeah, he gets mad.
Controlling transmission.
He thinks I do it on purpose.
Right.
No, I don't think you're a dolphin. I think you're a dumbass. There's a huge difference between a dolphin and a dumbass. Okay, well, without further ado, let's just get into it because everyone's excited as shit.
Ladies and gentlemen, sit back and relax.
Nope. I'm hitting buttons. I don't know what the hell's going on over here. See, I'm all kerfuffled over here. Gentlemen, hold on. Okay, there we go. We hit the break. Please introduce what is going on right now on tonight's Mediocrity, please.
Ooh,
I beg you.
Fredo, who is our superstar, top tier, platinum level guest?
Oh man, Trisha Morrison. So she's the wife of the late Tommy Morrison, heavyweight champion of the world.
Tommy the Duke Morrison.
Also actor, right? I mean, he was in Rocky.
Rocky Five.
I know. But yeah, I was a huge fan of Tommy's, when I was younger. Still am. But I remember watching his fights on ESPN, actually, and I didn't realize that they were filming the movie. They used some of his real fights in that movie. It was amazing. Because I saw Sylvester Stallone jumping in the ring, and it didn't make sense why he was on ESPN. But
well, nobody wants to hear from us,
But I just wanted to say, it's just an honor to have you on here, and I would love for you to tell your story of Tommy, and maybe start off with. Could you start off with how you guys met? Because you came in kind of later on, right, in his career. Maybe it was afterwards, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for having me. Of course, it would be so much better if Tommy was here himself. But the reason why I do these interviews, and again, I appreciate the invitation to your podcast tonight, is because about 164 million ESPN viewers have got one side of a narrative of Tommy and how Tommy passed away. And I need to clear that up because of scientific evidence that I have and everything that I've gone through over the last 10 years to prove his innocence, to exonerate him from what he was labeled as HIV, AIDS, victim, really. But yeah, we actually were both in Las Vegas in 1996, which I always call the scene of the crime, right? Because on February 10th, 1996, that's when Tommy was kicked out of boxing and told he had HIV. I think, can we all agree on that? That's when he was told that?
Correct.
Yeah. Well, after 10 years of investigation and going through the court system, it's been proven that nobody actually did diagnose Tommy with HIV in 1996. But I, too, was in 1996, and I heard it with my own ears that he had HIV. I heard that he was kicked out of boxing, and but we never actually met then. And it was a name that always stuck in my head because I was working in tourism. I was bringing in airlines from the UK, and I couldn't get hotel rooms to put these tourists in during certain weeks. And one of those weekends was February 10th, 1996. So I always, in those days, thought, well, whoever this Tommy Morrison is serves him right. It's all out in the media about a promiscuous lifestyle. What do you expect, right? So moving forward in time, in 2009, Tommy Morrison, is on a rooming list at a hotel that I was working at. I was the director of sales, and I had a rooming list, and I had a list of all the people checking in. And I see this name, Tommy Morrison, and I'm thinking, oh no, I hope it's not him. And I'm in the Midwest. I'm not even in Vegas. I'm in a totally different state. This is now a different year, 2009. And it ends up being him, Tommy Morrison. He's at my hotel. And as I've said in other interviews, I didn't know whether to give him the best room in the hotel or the worst room, right? But we met, and he was broken. He was just head down, totally depressed. His life had changed, and there he was in Wichita, Kansas, and that's where we met.
Wow. And now at this point,
and let's be honest, if you're in Wichita, Kansas, your life is pretty much over.
Yeah, what's it like out there?
I kid.
Yeah.
So at this point, then he wasn't having was he having any fights anywhere for like
No.
nothing?
No,
right? Nobody would let him fight, right?
Right. Yeah. Nobody. And remember, I mean, I didn't know him as a boxer really,
Right.
other than he was supposed to have boxed in '96. I didn't know him as a movie star because I'd never seen Rocky V, right?
Right.
And actually hadn't even heard of Sylvester Stallone, I hate to
Holy
say,
Jesus.
right? Ooh, yeah.
You.
With that accent you have, I don't doubt it for a minute.
What is that? Jersey accent?
Where are you from? Real quick, what's your background? Where are you from? Originally?
I was brought up in the UK, in England, and then moved to America. My father worked for the British Embassy in Washington, D.C., and then I worked for the British Tourist Office in Los Angeles. So
your dad was a spy for the turncoats. I get it. Okay.
and you know what's really funny? I mean, just with everything out in the news right now, Spare, that book on Spare, you know, the Duke and Duchess, right? Well, Tommy being called the Duke, my nickname had always been the Duchess, right?
Okay.
And so it was really to suddenly meet up with the Duke. But no, he wasn't licensed to box. Over the next few years, he tried to get licensed, but the commissions kept telling him that he had been suspended and that he had HIV, and that was it, basically.
Right.
But his last fight was in Wyoming. So he managed to fight there, and the one previous to that was West Virginia. So that was after 10 years of having been suspended. Suddenly, you know, he gets to fight again, and that's all before my time, right?
Mm-hmm. Wow. So he kept fighting too, no matter what. Then.
Yeah.
And now, so being that he couldn't fight, now he had a contract with.
He couldn't
Don
fight
King
in
at the
sanctioned
time?
fights, right? He could do like off. I don't know how the boxing world works.
As a professional, once you have your card, you really can't take amateur or like I don't know if you could do unsanctioned bouts. I guess you could, but then those are mostly amateurs.
Right. When he was when we had met, so between 2009 onwards, he did do an exhibition fight in California. Riddick Bowe was there, and it was basically it was fun, for him. It was basically an exhibition fight to raise funds. It was a fundraiser for an orphanage with Garcia Boxing up there in San Francisco area. But you didn't need to get licensed for that. He tried to do another exhibition fight down in South Carolina or North Carolina, and that would have been with Ray Mercer and actually quite a few of the other
Ray Mercer,
boxers.
wow.
Yeah, quite a few of the other boxers, but they wouldn't license him even for an exhibition fundraising fight down there. Yeah, so it just depended which commission.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is all based on somebody just claiming
Now,
that he
can
had
I-
HIV, never got diagnosed properly or tested or.
That's right. It was all based on, and you hit it on the head there, all based on somebody telling Tommy he had HIV in Las Vegas in 1996. Now, I don't know, have you watched that ESPN?
I did not watch that, but I have my own version. Like I have a I got to ask this question.
I didn't watch it because I didn't want to be biased. I wanted to hear your story, and then I want to watch that, if that makes sense.
Right.
I wanted to do the reversal. I didn't want you to. I wanted to hear your story and your side because you were there. You know him. You were married to him and all that. I wanted to hear your story before I ever dove into any of that.
Right. And you know, and that's fair enough because a lot of people have seen that documentary first. And then here I am out there showing court records and confessions and everything that are done under oath. And they're looking very puzzled, thinking, well, how did they get away with saying what they said on ESPN?
Well, because that's what our media does to us. That's what our media has a selling point, and they we can juice this story up this way or whatever.
Well, yeah, that sells.
I mean,
drama.
If you trust media nowadays and don't do your own research, you might as well just stick your head in the sand and lube up your asshole.
Spider bites don't sell dishwasher detergent.
Right.
You know, and what I call it now is fan journalism. You know, it's the fans that are out there now that are helping Tommy's story, the true story, get out there. It's not the ESPN's. ESPN had a chance to do it, and everything I'm going to show you tonight, ESPN knew. They had access to. It's all in the court of law, and they withheld it from their documentary, and they withheld it from all Tommy's fans. You know, just to give you an idea, when Tommy passed away on September 1, 2013, he passed away of cardiac arrest, septic shock, septicemia, and multi-organ failure. He was given, he was put under a coma, induced coma.
Induced coma.
Yeah, 24 hours before he died. And that's how he passed away on September 1. And the physicians asked me in Nebraska, in this really good facility up there, did I want a post-mortem autopsy done? I said, absolutely. I said, because, you know, all these years, Tommy was told, yes, he did. No, he didn't. You know, I just want to be able to tell the public, yeah, you guys were right. You know, Tommy had HIV, AIDS, or you know what? Tommy was right. He never had HIV, AIDS, and it's been confirmed by the scientists. So they went ahead and they drew blood from Tommy. And that was September 1 at 11:50 p.m. I remember it all very, very clearly. And the media went crazy. So you're absolutely right when you said if you're just going to believe the media, right? The media went crazy that second day, September 2nd. And they said, because Tommy Morrison was diagnosed with HIV on February 10th, 1996 in Las Vegas, he died of AIDS on September 1, 2013. Clean cut, end of story, right? And I'm sitting there listening to all this, watching all this happen on social media, and everybody blaming Tommy for his promiscuous lifestyle, and he deserves to die like that. And I'm thinking, you know, wait, you know, there's a post-mortem being worked on right now, and it just doesn't happen within 24 hours. So September 17th, which is almost 3 weeks after, the physicians called me from Nebraska and told me HIV negative. And I said, okay. I said, you know, Tommy was right. And I said, do you mind giving that to me in writing? You know, obviously I'm going to ask for it in writing, right? And they said, yeah, absolutely. And so I had them send me the post-mortem through, and they faxed it. And the post-mortem is in the court of law. It's filed in federal court in Nevada for anybody that doesn't want to believe it. It's filed in the Ninth Circuit Court in San Francisco. It's filed in the U.S. Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. Wow. Now, the person that called me, I'm going to show you a picture. I hope you can see it.
Yes.
His name is Dr. Philip Smith, and he's won numerous awards in Nebraska. He was the one that called me, no HIV, Mrs. Morrison. I said, okay, put it in writing. This gentleman here, I hope you can see it, Dr. Hendricks, he was the one that performed the post-mortem. He authored the post-mortem report. He even worked with Dr. Anthony Fauci in 1980s when HIV first came out. So he knew what he was doing.
Yeah, Fauci's first big money grab.
Exactly,
yeah,
at the NIH. And this guy worked with him, right? And then, so they send me the post-mortem.
Knows about AIDS and HIV, absolutely. Yeah.
This is the post-mortem, and it's properly signed, and it's in scientific terms, and it's authored by that scientist, and it clearly says no viral particles are seen, no retroviral budding is present. Retrovirus is the scientific word for HIV.
Correct.
No viral inclusions, no viral particles were seen. It's all in there. It's dated, and it was faxed to me. Going back to the history of HIV, Dr. Luc Montagnier, he's standing there and he's showing everybody what HIV looks like. This is going back to the 80s, okay? And this is under magnification of 7,800, all right, showing you what HIV looks like. This is Dr. Robert Gallo, and he was also a co-discoverer of HIV. He's showing you what HIV looks like, which is all those black dots. And then here is Tommy's, because I had them photograph it. This is under 18,000 magnification, and you cannot see one black dot.
Right.
And that's Tommy's post-mortem report. And that should be enough, guys. That should be enough for ESPN. They knew about the post-mortem. The post-mortem was done in 2013. ESPN brought out their documentary, which went viral all over the world, excluding the post-mortem, and they brought their documentary out in 2017. So I have to try and catch up now, and I have to try and contact 164 million people everywhere and say, hey, you know, they forgot the post-mortem, guys. And no media will report on that now. No media will report on Tommy's death because if they did, they would have to say that there was a post-mortem that showed no HIV. So a post-mortem is the final diagnosis. That's it. It's what it is on there. And there was no HIV. So then who diagnosed Tommy in Vegas, right? I'm going to ask you guys, who diagnosed him?
I believe, and I hate to use these guys, Quest Diagnostics. Was it Quest Diagnostics that did the test on him? And then I believe it was a secretary or somebody that leaked it out, right?
Well, you see, when I found out that no HIV was in Tommy, I contacted Vegas, right? And I got in contact with the physician. If anybody does a diagnosis, it has to be a physician, right? Okay. It can't be the janitor, right? It can't be a bus conductor. It can't be a train conductor. It has to be somebody in the field of medicine,
right?
And
right, exactly. Yeah, I'm not a gynecologist, but I'll take a look. You know.
Right. So this is where this whole story gets crazy, right? This is where everything goes wrong, right here. Yeah.
Everything goes wrong right here is who diagnosed. So I couldn't get the answer from Vegas as to who diagnosed Tommy. And all I wanted really was to approach them and just say, hey, you better have good medical malpractice because my husband died and he didn't have HIV and you kicked him out of boxing for having HIV and they found no HIV AIDS in him. So I didn't get any answers.
And then there's slander by ESPN for not covering it fully. I mean, that's defamation, slander. That's all of that. Yeah, wow. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It's crazy putting it all together as we sit here and talk about it.
Yeah, it really is. And what I'm going to show you is, okay, so I went to the U.S. Supreme Court. I went to the Ninth Circuit Court. I went to federal court in Nevada. So I chose 5 defendants because I thought, okay, one of them must have diagnosed Tommy with HIV. So I chose Quest Diagnostics, the lab, right, which obviously would be it. I chose a doctor called Dr. Hyatt because all over the media, again, in 2007, it said that Dr. Hyatt had reviewed Tommy's results in 1996, and he was unequivocally positive, right? And then that came from Dr. Margaret Goodman, who runs VADA, Voluntary Anti-Doping in Vegas. So she was a defendant. I chose the Nevada Athletic Commission because it happened in Nevada, and I chose Mark Ratner, who was the executive commissioner, who was the one that supposedly told somebody that Tommy had HIV. So those were my five defendants, right? So it wasn't a total waste of time, but I spent 9 years in the court system, right? And all of them didn't diagnose Tommy. Nobody, not even one of them.
Yes.
One of the documents, which is document 217, and again, anybody that's on this program or doubts me in any way can go and look up docket 217, page 4, and it's line 15, where the Nevada Athletic Commission attorney, which is the Nevada Attorney General's office, you can't get any higher than that in Vegas, says this honorable court should not lose sight of the fact that no one diagnosed Mr. Morrison with HIV on February 10, 1996. And that's in court records, right? Nobody diagnosed Tommy.
Right. Yet somebody told him he had it.
Right. Somebody did tell him. So over the 9 years, I went through, did my due diligence, and contacted the CEO of the lab, and he did an affidavit, right? I mean, these aren't just script notes for a documentary. This is an affidavit signed under oath.
And that lab is Quest
Diagnostics.
Yep.
Yes. And the CEO, his name is Henry Soloway, Dr. Henry Soloway, says, I conclude that Mr. Morrison was never infected with HIV virus. And that's in docket 136, if anybody wants to research that for themselves, right? And then the Nevada Athletic Commission, Bob Bennett, who's in charge of the NSAC during this lawsuit, in docket number 174 says, plaintiff, which would be me, I'm the plaintiff, now recognizes that neither the state defendants, which would be Dr. Margaret Goodman, the commission, and Mark Ratner, nor Quest Diagnostics ever diagnosed Mr. Morrison as carrying the HIV virus, right? So that's another document. Hey, we're not the ones that diagnosed him. And again, they say throughout the 9 years, as stated numerous times, no diagnosis of HIV was made on February 10 or at any time by any state defendants. That's another docket. So I went to the physician in Vegas who was there in 1996, nice man, Dr. Robert Voy, and his attorney, right, Dr. Counsel Mortensen, he came back on behalf of the physician. I mean, this is a very serious case. And he says, it is important for you to understand that Dr. Voy did not diagnose and never has diagnosed Mr. Morrison as HIV positive. And that is in docket 283. Wow. And then the ring physician, he didn't diagnose him either. That's Dr. Berliner. he was physically in good condition to fight, right? And he signs an affidavit, okay? Dr. Margaret Goodman, who was another defendant, she honestly answered a question. I asked her, admit you can provide a document that confirms a diagnosis of the virus HIV in Tommy's blood on February 10, 1996. And she responds, deny. She couldn't provide a document. And she follows that up with an affidavit, right? So right now, we don't have anybody that actually diagnosed Tommy with HIV. So let's look at the report, right? Because there was no report that was available at the time in February 1996 in Las Vegas to say Tommy had HIV, except for now in this lawsuit. So Quest Diagnostics comes up with a report suddenly out of the blue. The commission had never seen it. Tommy had never seen it. And I'm seeing it for the first time. And it says that Dr. Robert Voy requested this test and drew his blood. But Dr. Voy is saying he never requested it, he never drew the blood, and he never diagnosed Tommy. On this report, it says Tommy's 99 years old. And then it says that they actually
reported. He looked pretty damn good for 99.
He was just 27. He just turned 27. And then they reported the results to a Dr. Russell. Well, there isn't a Dr. Russell during that time. The only Dr. Russell that I could Google, he retired back in 1985. So that doctor didn't exist. And then there's no signature at the bottom of the report. Right?
Nobody wanted to own it.
Exactly.
Anytime me that shit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because every time I do an interview, little things like this come up. You know, I never even thought of that. When you said nobody wanted to own it, you're absolutely right. And by their law at that time, you had to sign off on a lab report. And then it says that the specimen is stored in a toxicology freezer. Well, when you're testing blood for HIV, it has to be room temperature. You cannot freeze it, right?
Right.
And then I asked, well, what test was it? Well, it happened to be a $23 test. And I said, okay, well, which test? And their answer was, Quest Diagnostics was, well, because despite reasonable inquiry, Quest Diagnostics, has been unable to identify the exact model and manufacturer of the FDA-approved confirmatory Western blot test kit that was in use. So they couldn't even say which test it was, right?
Right.
This is all happening in Vegas, okay? And then the judge...
And these are the same people that are testing your hookers that you're allowed to legally sleep with.
Well, that's the thing. Like Quest Diagnostics, I'm just surprised that the Nevada Athletic Commission would use such a... I don't know. To me, they're like...
They're the McDonald's. Man. They're the McDonald's of laboratories.
Yeah, like...
Yeah, like every state, every city has a Quest Diagnostics.
They missed my chlamydia like 17 times.
It's like hims.com. All you got to do is go show up and answer some questions and get boner pills.
Such a honky tonk. I don't know, but
to answer that question is that did come up in the lawsuit. That, hey, you know, you could have used any lab. Yeah. It didn't have to be Quest Diagnostics. And so, you know, because that was one thing that they said was, you know, Tommy refused to take the blood test, but then he did take it. And then suddenly they have to try and get results within 2 days when he could have had this test done out of state, right? But
I'm not gonna lie, it was the mid-90s. Every male walking the fucking planet Earth was scared to take an AIDS test back then.
Yeah, really.
Just saying.
Well, the judge in Vegas, Richard F. Bullweather II, nice guy, and really they all treated me really well in 9 years, right? and he was the fourth judge. The other three had recused themselves. They didn't want to, I think, take or have any responsibility again for this case. He says in 2016, he goes, we wouldn't even be having this discussion, this lawsuit, if the test was specific for the existence of the virus or not. That's obviously even the possibility of a claim. The tests didn't test for the virus.
So he's just going in a big circle constantly with these people.
Well, you know what?
Everybody's passing the buck. And
it wasn't a waste of time, though. It really wasn't, because what it proved was that none of them had diagnosed Tommy with HIV. Right. But now, you look at that ESPN documentary, and you've got a completely different narrative, because that's where he was told he had HIV. He was told by Tony Holden, okay? And he was told by Tony Holden in a hotel room at the MGM. And remember, the MGM in 1996, I believe, was the largest hotel in the world, right?
Correct, yes.
A lot of big fights there.
Yeah. So the narrative in that documentary is that Tony Holden says that when he arrived at the hotel on the day of the fight, the phone rang and he was told to go and meet Mark Ratner, the commissioner, by the ring, and come alone without anybody. So when you see that documentary, watch that part, right? And it's at the ringside where Tony Holden says that Mark Ratner's eyes are all watery, and Mark Ratner tells Tony Holden, sorry, the fight's canceled. Tommy's got HIV. He failed his HIV test. He's got HIV, right? And so Tony Holden then tries to get a hold of Tommy before the fight, and finally finds Tommy. And Tommy comes to Tony Holden's room and sits down, and Tony Holden tells Tommy he has HIV. Okay. Now, there's a couple of problems with that. After going through this lawsuit, right, is that Mark Ratner, under oath, says he never went to the ring. He never met Tony Holden, and he never told Tony Holden that Tommy had HIV. So there is a huge problem right there.
Oh, come on, man. And he's on film saying it.
And he's on film saying it. What's so ridiculous is that this was signed on the 30th of November, 2015. I hope you can see that. And that is a document where I ask Mark Ratner, please state with specificity all facts and identify all documents related and or concerning your ringside meeting with Tony Holden without Don King and Morrison present, which effectively canceled Morrison's pending bout and indefinitely suspended Morrison. And his response is, this responding party, which would be Mark Ratner, did not meet with Tony Holden ringside. He says it in 2015, and the documentary comes out in 2017. They didn't even do their due diligence, right?
Wow. To even edit that out of there.
But if you go even, like, I immediately go into conspiracy theory mode. How much money was made and not given back that night on that bout through sponsors or whatever? How, if Don King was involved, there's some shady shit going on. You know what I mean? Let's not think Don King is Don fucking King. He's Don King. He's a piece of shit.
Yeah, and he's the real, Yeah. He was a heavy hitter back then, yeah.
I can't comment on whether he was a piece of shit or not, right? Because
I'm just giving my opinion.
Right, yeah. All I can show you are the documents, right? And then you can decide for yourself. I did try and contact Don King in 2013 and 2014. And quite honestly, why, if he was Tommy's promoter,
Right.
he had a multi-million-dollar contract with Tommy, why would he not have said, "Hey, Trisha, I'll be happy to help you"? That could have been a great fight. That Mike Tyson fight could have been great. If he didn't have HIV, then I should be part of this lawsuit, right? But he didn't. he didn't call me. He didn't take my phone calls. His gatekeeper lady that runs his office, or ran his office then, she kept on hanging up. She kept on saying
that's the thing. You'd think he'd want it because of the money
Well,
factor.
it's surprising considering how well he treated Mike Tyson.
Well, yeah, right.
So
but what was his motive? You got to wonder.
Well, that's what I'm saying. How much money?
Loss of money. Tommy was lined up to fight Tyson. So that was going to be a big money maker for everybody.
Yeah. Okay, this is the contract, the Tommy Morrison Don King contract. And again, you can go on to court records and you'll find it there. Basically, it was a $35 million contract, as Tommy often explained when he got kicked out. Basically, it was going to be 3 warm-up fights, and then he was in line to fight Tyson. And it would be $10 million to fight Tyson. It would be a $15 million rematch, and another $10 million for Tommy for training expenses and blah, 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 right? So in addition to the 3 fights beforehand. So it was a multi-million-dollar contract.
Was Tyson a champion at this time?
Yeah, he was on top.
Was it a champion? It was a champion fight?
It was for the championship bout. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was going for the belt.
Tyson was knocking motherfuckers out in like 8 seconds.
And Tyson had just got out of jail too, right?
Yeah. So he had a little bit of pent up rage.
Yeah.
Right. But Tommy personally told me I would have beaten Tyson, right? He knew he would have beaten Tyson. So anyway, that's what the contract is. But some other bizarre things happened in this court case is that Tommy's opponent in Vegas in '96 of the fight that was canceled was against Arthur Stormy Weathers, right?
Right.
And Arthur Stormy Weathers apparently was not going to be able to fight anyway. And what came out in court records, which I don't know whether they were supposed to have done or not, but there was a script written by Arthur Stormy Weathers' physician that is saying you cannot fight for the next 2 to 3 weeks, and that's dated 2nd of February '96, and that went to Don King and the Nevada Commission. So on the 2nd of February, that's 8 days before the fight, Stormy's own physician is not clearing him to fight, right? There's a manager's letter, another exhibit, which was produced by the Nevada Commission, and it's a letter from Stormy Weathers' manager saying, basically, we're really sorry, we didn't want to take your money and run, but Stormy won't be able to fight, and we have to pull out, right? Well, then nobody pulls out, right? They don't pull Stormy out. They have this great photo shoot and weigh-in on the 9th of February, the night before, and then the next day, the person that gets kicked out of boxing is Tommy. So there was never a replacement found for Stormy Weathers. It just almost was like, did they know that they were going to cancel and kick Tommy out?
Boxing just historically seems such a shady,
shady fucking
such a shady sport.
Damn, it's so
shady.
It is
the most cutthroat. I tell people this all the time. In my opinion, it is the most cutthroat in the pros, dangerous business that I have ever.
That and I hear coffee shops.
It's that and coffee shops only in the morning. But boxing is a very dirty business. I've experienced it in the pros, and even in the amateurs, I've experienced it. So it's the promoters can be shitty people, managers can be shitty people. It's a bad business. When you got a guy that's going to make $10 million in one night, or everybody's his friend. That's all I could say.
Yeah, that's why we hang out with Stizo. We're waiting for that night.
Then somebody asked me on an interview, well, who else was promoting that event that night? Well, I come across a January 22nd, 1996 faxed letter, and it's to Don King Productions, and there were two contracts. There was a contract, it says agreement by and between Don King Productions Inc. and Tommy Morrison, dated September 14, 95, and an agreement by and between Don King Productions Inc. and Holden Productions. So Tony Holden also had his own contract with Don King, which Tommy could never quite understand why Tony Holden would have his own contract with Don King. And then what's
another peak in the
yeah.
And Tony Holden is the one that told Tommy he had HIV. Right.
So is what you're saying is, again, I'm the dumb person. I don't know nothing about boxing. So they should have had just one contract between two boxers, is what you're saying, instead of Tommy having a contract and Holden having a contract?
Well, that and one contract through one promoter.
Right.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If Don King is named twice, shouldn't it just be one agreement, one contract between two fighters and a promoter? Or is it always each fighter has a contract with the promoter?
Well, each fighter does have their own contract.
Okay.
Yeah. But in this case, Don King had a contract with Tommy, right, as the fighter, and he had a contract with Tony Holden. So basically, Tony Holden was working for Don King.
Gotcha.
He wasn't working for Tommy because Tommy did not have a contract with Tony Holden. So it's always been, people have asked me, well, why did Tony Holden tell Tommy he had HIV in Vegas in 1996? Why was there no physician with Tony Holden? And why was Tony Holden even involved in, telling Tommy, that's it, let's get you out of here? And what's even more bizarre is that on July 11th, 2006, there is a letter that was included in the exhibits by the Nevada Commission, and it's dated July 11, 2006, and it is a letter to Fight Facts, which is a company in New Jersey that puts people on suspension lists, and it's the commission telling Fight Facts to change the suspension to just license denied. In other words, they lifted the suspension from Tommy 10 years later.
It's also
wow. So shifty, man. See?
So we have a question
Money
in the
talks,
room.
man. Somebody's pulling strings.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
it.
So we have a question in the chat room, and the lovely Linda Lopez wants to know, why didn't Tommy get tested from the beginning of the accusations to prove them all wrong?
Yeah, like a second source.
Like independently tested.
Right. And he did. He did with Tony Holden.
Right.
Oh, another shiesty guy in the group. Got it. Right.
Well, the same guy that told him he had HIV is the one that then, and that's an excellent question. Tony Holden flew Tommy out of Vegas and took him to Tulsa for testing.
Wow.
Right. So there's a document here again where in a deposition, Tony Holden says, the press is already knowing that he's going to be suspended. Get him out of here, is what Tony Holden is saying. So Tony Holden then takes him to Tulsa and supposedly has independent testing again. Remember, Tommy is just 27 years old. He doesn't know anything about what's been going on. He's being told he is going to die by the time he gets to his car. Everything is out of his control. as a young boxer from the age of 20, it's always been the promoter that's handled everything. All he had to do, and I remember him saying this, is all he had to do is get in the ring and fight, right? That's all he had to do. He had to not make any arrangements for food, clothing, transportation.
Wow.
That was all taken care of for him, right? He just had to concentrate on fighting. So
that's like us as podcasters. That's all taken care of for us as professional podcasters. We don't have to think of a thing.
So Tony Holden takes him to Tulsa to get retested. So, yep, absolutely great question there. You would expect that. But first of all, I would expect you not to leave Vegas. I would expect there to be a physician there to question what's going on. I would expect them to redraw blood in Vegas. There's no need to take him out of Vegas. You've got a lab there. You've got a physician there. You've got the person there. You've got their blood there.
AIDS test, yeah.
Test him before you indefinitely worldwide suspend him. But none of that happened. He was flown directly out of Vegas to Tulsa. Well, so the next conference is this one, right? And, clearly you've got Tony Holden there again with Tommy, right? All right. But let's compare that to Magic Johnson with his physician, Dr. David Ho, right? Okay, when Magic Johnson declared he was HIV positive as well, right? So there's no physician standing next to Tommy. So we were told that there was a James Hutton, Dr. James Hutton, that had done that second testing, independent testing, right?
Okay.
During deposition, nobody can remember who came and took the blood. Nobody can remember ever seeing the results of the second testing. There were no results provided in the lawsuit of any testing for Tulsa, right, of 1996. But then what happens in court records is that this Dr. James Hutton, he is an infectious disease specialist, and it showed that he initially examined the claimant, which is Tommy, on March 5, 1996, at which time he noted that the claimant, Tommy, had been found to be HIV positive during testing that was performed in Nevada prior to a heavyweight boxing match that the claimant was scheduled to participate in. So in other words, now we've taken everything from Vegas with no test result, no diagnosis made. We've now taken it to Tulsa, and then Tulsa are saying, well, Dr. James Hutton says it all happened in Vegas, right? So again, he's not taking any responsibility for it.
Well, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas,
Oh yes.
Unfortunately, this is proof on the fucking platter right here.
And then, in addition to that, then Tony Holden finds a Dr. Epps and a Dr. Wilkinson, and both those are not HIV physicians, right? And then there's this gentleman here, Dr. Bodner, and he's on that ESPN 30 for 30 in his white coat. And what the test that he's using and that ESPN is trying to tell the world is an HIV test is actually a test that's brought out by Roche Diagnostics, and in their disclaimers and email directly to us says, please note that neither this test nor any other Roche Diagnostics assay test is intended for use as a diagnostic test to confirm the presence of HIV infection. So he's not using a test that detects HIV. And then another physician that Tony Holden takes Tommy to is a Dr. Nemechek. And there he is with a cowboy hat on. And he actually is not an expert witness in HIV/AIDS. He's an osteopath. He's not even board certified to diagnose Tommy with HIV or anything like that. And then that Dr. Hyatt that I named as a defendant.
Construction worker?
I was gonna say, is he the Y in YMCA?
It's tough times, man. You got to make ends meet when you're not a doctor.
Poor guy. He was mentioned in worldwide media. You're talking about the New York Times, the USA Today, everywhere, as the physician that diagnosed Tommy with HIV in 1996. Well, I come to do the due diligence, and this Dr. Hyatt is not a doctor. He is a PhD, which is not a doctor of medicine, and he's not a pathologist. He's not even board certified in HIV/AIDS, and he is not a medical doctor, and he had no role in the 1996 HIV screening, and that comes directly from Dr. Hyatt.
So he's a lot like Dr. Dre. Not really a doctor.
You know what?
Yeah,
Don't forget about Dre.
Yeah, that's right.
So the other physician in the mix is Dr. David Ho, who's Dr. Magic Johnson. That was another physician that Tony Holden arranged for Tommy. And Dr. Ho destroyed the test results. So there were no results.
I just want to say I love his name. Dr. Ho. Sounds like he hangs out with Dr. Dre.
So
wow.
So that is to answer her question. Did he have extra testing done? And the answer would be everybody really has referred back to the 1996 Vegas diagnosis and testing. So it wasn't really until 2012, 2013 when Tommy was tested for all the AIDS-defining diseases that Dr. Fauci said that you would have, and they all came back negative for HIV or AIDS.
I'm going to tell you right now, you got me fucking hook, line, and sinker. Like,
yeah,
I believe the fix is in. There was some shady shit going on from the get-go.
Yeah.
Well, it seems pretty obvious.
Set up, like, I mean, who would gain from this is what you got.
Millions of dollars involved. There's titles. There's fucking everything. It's so bonkers.
See, now's the time to watch that documentary because now it's more enjoyable.
To TV.
Well, you could sit there and know that this man is a liar, and this man is a liar.
So
it's just more enjoyable to me that way.
I don't want to put you on a. I don't want to put you on the spot, Gio, but you were chomping at the bit. You had a question, or I don't know, 20.
Oh, I probably had a million questions, but I mean, she was answering. I mean,
yeah, you're just, so Jafredo put together a list of questions, but I think you just knocked them.
I mean, I wanted to talk about Don King, but you really answered. I'm just surprised that he didn't get back to you. I'm not surprised that, like, I know him, like, oh, I'm surprised Donnie Boy didn't get back to you. But, like, it's money-wise, it just doesn't make sense to me. But to him...
That's like going through high school and playing football for a coach, and then you graduate high school and you reach out to your coach, and he's like, you're dead to me. Like, why would you not reach... Like as a human fucking being, why wouldn't you be like, oh, yeah, let's figure this out, Because he's a piece of shit, that's why.
Yeah, it's just
the opinions on the GNC
but it makes me want to look into it deeper.
Necessarily the opinions of Trisha Morrison.
Oh yeah, and we live in separate states.
But guys, I didn't know anything about boxing, and it's called the sweet science, right?
That's right.
And what I did was I looked into the science of everything, and I had to learn the sweet science. I even delved into the regulation in 1996 because when the commission said, oh, well, no, nobody diagnosed Tommy with HIV, well, then why did you kick him out, right? I mean, I'm asking questions like every person that's listening to this wants to ask. And so the response in one of the documents, docket 140, which is actually way early in the lawsuit, because we went into like the 380 documents just in federal court. they say, and I'm reading it from that document, Morrison failed to comply with NAC 467.027 Section 3, and as a result was not issued a license. Fair enough. If you fail to comply with a licensing rule, then you either, comply or you don't get a license, right? But there's no need to indefinitely worldwide suspend somebody, give them a chance. Well, okay, so that's one argument. But then I went to the legislator in Nevada and I said, okay, Tommy Morrison failed to comply with the NAC 467.027 Section 3 on February 10th, 1996. Was it a rule then? And I don't know why I even thought of asking. And as I do of an evening, I'll sit in what I call Tommy's room, and suddenly things, an idea will come to me and be like, oh, yeah, why didn't I think of asking that? Almost like Tommy's left hook saying, hey, try and find out. So I asked the Nevada legislator about that rule that Tommy had violated for them to deny him a license. And in the minutes of the meeting, for 1996, there was no rule, right? There was no NAC 467.027 Section 3. There was in December of 1997, that's 21 months later, that rule came into effect. So there was no rule that he violated in 1996.
I smell a rat.
So it's like,
see, they didn't count on you. That's their problem. No, it's 100%.
Sure.
This would be like if this would be Jenny would do the same thing.
Oh yeah.
Forget it.
Belinda would too.
I'm telling you.
That's
a wife.
You're
it's right. A good wife.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a wife.
Yeah.
It's
they
a
thought
widow.
that you were just going to be some bimbo like woman, just Tommy died, and that's it. And you were going to go away and be intimidated by the big wigs in Nevada and all that. And you.
Well, that dovetails nicely with a question in the the chat room. This guy Mike Verone, we don't really give him much respect, but
no.
He's a big
he has a really stupid
shit.
question. He has what might be on the surface considered a stupid question. So, what do you hope to gain by proving that Tommy didn't die of HIV?
Well, I've proved it already. He did not die of HIV/AIDS.
Right.
You have to realize, what's his name again, Mike?
It's me. I'm just being silly.
Okay.
Yeah. So just like what is the outcome that you hope to see?
Okay. So and it's funny that you ask that now, because 10 years ago, who knew what the outcome was going to be, right? We've uncovered a lot of stuff. When Tommy died, I did a deathbed promise to him that I would finish his fight for him, and that the truth would come out, and maybe even a documentary would come out. It was important to him that people knew the good, the bad, the ugly, and the truth. And all the years before he and I met, he fought for justice for himself, and the media ridiculed him. People wouldn't touch him. They wouldn't come near him. Even when we were together, we would have some media that would say, oh, I need to, be 6 feet away from you. I'm sorry, I'm not going to, shake your hand. That's horrible to see. I mean, although all you guys have gone through that with the latest, right? COVID
Exactly.
thing. Exactly the same thing happened to him, but for years and years and years.
Wow.
So, what do I hope to achieve is that this is never going to happen again to anybody else, right? If you're a promoter, please, make sure that the rules and regulations are in place and that you're following them. If you are needing to tell somebody that they are dying and have got a deathly disease, let the physician do that. Have evidence, check them, check Tommy for false positives. It's very well known that tests will react false positive if there's something in your system, right? And that goes for a lot of the testing. And that's something that I did with Tommy is, people are now going to ask you in this podcast, okay, well, if he didn't have HIV or AIDS, what did he die of, right?
Yeah, that's coming next. Sure.
I know that's coming next, yeah. and it's a very, very good question. And I'm going to show you because it's the only way you guys are going to understand, because ESPN didn't show you, okay? They purposely, intentionally left out the real cause of Tommy's downfall. When Tommy was thrown into jail in 2011 over what was a felony fugitive warrant of arrest. This was in August, September of 2011. Right up until then, he was working out in the gym, just doing great stuff, putting gyms together. There was nothing wrong with him.
What was the original warrant for?
Oh, it was a BS charge. Yeah. Yes,
it was some nonsense.
Yeah, and I followed that through just as your wives and girlfriends would. It was an $80 unpaid fine from South Dakota in 2006.
Oh yeah,
and this was now 2000.
Reasonable,
right?
This was now 2011, but you have to understand, Tommy was always
it's
a cop
$80 fucking dollars. It's $80 fucking dollars. You know what I mean?
We're coming for you.
Are you closing the fucking state because you didn't get this $80 as a warrant? Get the fuck out of here.
It was a felony fugitive warrant of arrest, and it was a sealed one. So we couldn't find out what it was until he was extradited from Tennessee to Kansas, to Wichita, Kansas.
Wichita, Kansas.
That's our justice system, people. Fighting for you, the little man.
I bet you that costs a few bucks more than 80.
Right.
You know what? That I asked that question myself. How much was that private plane? How much was this? How much was that? And it was well over $5,000 just for a half-hour flight.
Sounds like the justice system to me.
That's your government. We'll trade $5,000 for 80.
So when Tommy came out of jail, he had he was already saying he was suffering from like a sore chest, and when he came out of jail, he came out with an abscess to the side of his chest. And so I immediately took him to a doctor in Wichita, Kansas, when we bailed him out. He was on $50,000 bail, right? So it was not easy to get a hold of bail for that. But after...
Especially when Don King won't answer his fucking phone.
Yeah.
Unreal, yeah.
And the story goes even deeper. John Gotti Jr. got involved in a lot of stuff and tried to help me as well. I mean, it's just unbelievable. This whole story.
Of course he did.
Yeah,
he was a man of the neighborhood.
So anyway, so when I bailed Tommy out, took him immediately to the doctor, Dr. Antonio Ossio, nice doctor in Wichita, Kansas. And he even writes an affidavit, it's in court records, that he attended to Tommy's wound. He even writes a letter, right? And it says here...
hold on. You said it was a wound. But
yes.
Was it a wound or was it a abscess?
I'll show that to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying because I'm just trying to...
That's a good question. The physician actually writes out exactly what was wrong. He says, please be advised that Tommy Morrison was seen in my office on September 29th, 2011. He had a large abscess to his right axilla, which was a result of an insect bite, probably a spider, that had occurred a few days prior to his visit on the 29th.
Gotcha.
It was necessary to drain the abscess at that time. If you require any additional information, please do not hesitate to contact me. And it's signed by the physician. So it happened in jail. And I took pictures of everything, guys, right from the beginning to the end. That's the abscess on the side of his chest, right?
Yep.
And bear in mind, when you look at that ESPN...
I've been there. I've had a spider bite that was...
I've had it.
It left a crater, a pea-sized crater in my skin. So I get it, yeah.
And bear in mind, when you look at ESPN, Tony Holden is turning to me or turning to the 164 million viewers and saying, Trisha, what do you think the problem is with Tommy? And I go, well, it's a spider bite. And he goes, no, in my opinion, it's AIDS. I'm not a doctor. Just listen for that, because that is so aggravating. He is so demeaning. And then we've got more stuff here. I'm going to show this to you. So when we left Wichita, Kansas, Tommy got arrested 3 more times, right? In a matter of 3 days.
Right, attaboy.
Getting back to Tennessee. So in Tennessee,
that's a rough fucking drive, huh?
What happened? That's just crazy.
In Tennessee, he had surgery, and the surgeon said it would be a 1-hour surgery. We drove there. We even parked in the 2-hour parking spot.
He had surgery for the spider bite.
For the chest,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we parked in the 1-hour parking spot, and we didn't come out for 8 days. And I drove back home with him. He was totally a different person. He wasn't the bouncy Tommy Morrison. And the next day, the home health lady came to change the bandage on the side of Tommy's chest after the surgery. And it was like a 4x4, like a little piece of bandage like this, right?
Right.
That's all she had to do, was take that off and put another new one on the side of his chest. Well, she took it off, right? And I noticed, again, being the wicked widow and wicked wife, right, that there was a piece of thread sticking out of Tommy's chest. And she said, well, no, all I've got to do, this is the only thing, is just to put new bandage on. I said, no. There is something sticking in his chest, right? And this is a reenactment for those of you that are watching.
It's a hell of a job. It's a Kleenex box with a picture of his wound over it, and you have this.
Right.
Great job. I love it.
Yeah.
So, but it shows the gravity of it, because how you can squish 12 foot of surgical gauze in chest. And so the nurse, and Tommy was sitting on a stool in the kitchen, the nurse started to pull and pull. And this is surgical gauze, 12 foot.
Oh, wow.
Obviously, it's not white when it came out of his chest. It was covered in blood clots. It smelled really badly. It had been in there 8 days, undocumented.
You know what the scary thing is that is not uncommon.
I know. 12 feet of it.
12 feet.
Oh.
That's got to be
that's
like
a whole roll.
That's like what? That
is a whole roll plus.
Wow.
And it all comes out of his chest, and no antibiotics, no painkillers, no lidocaine, nothing, not on the surgery table, and it all comes out of his chest. And you're talking about 12 foot of gauze, and none of this is shown on that ESPN documentary. Okay.
Wow.
None of this. This is the downfall of Tommy Morrison. And that night, his right leg, which was the same side as his chest wound, just gave way, and his head went straight through the wall with the sheetrock, just went straight through, and he fell onto his neck, on the side of his neck. And it wasn't for about another 6 months that we found out that he had actually paralyzed half his voice box when he fell on his neck, which meant that everything that he was trying to eat or drink ended up as aspiration pneumonia, and it made it impossible for him to eat or drink. This is the photographs I took saying, hey, look, there's something in there. And these are photographs at the time, right? Because I wanted to make sure that this was all documented, right? And there's the, the gauze left in there. This is what it looked like. Once all the gauze was out, you could put your whole hand in there, right? It was a huge hole.
Wow.
But because his immune system was still really good, it took just 12 months to actually heal. A horrible scar, but it healed, but it already caused septic shock and septicemia.
Wow.
And then people have also asked me, well, why didn't you take that surgeon to court? Well, I filed the papers with the Medical Advisory Board in Tennessee. They lost them. And then when I filed them again, they told me I was out of time. And they wouldn't deal with it.
Well, that's a weird coinky dink.
Wow.
No, it's hard when it's a celebrity. It really is hard. Nobody wants to take any liability. This was the physician Eric Williams who diagnosed Tommy with sepsis. So again,
tell me he doesn't look like Jim Norton.
A little bit, perhaps more than that.
So 21 months of septic shock, in and out of ICU. It was, he did so well. Normally, if you have septic shock or sepsis, you could die within a few days, right?
Yeah, it's usually not a lingering diagnosis.
Yeah. And he fought that. One of the things that between 2012 and 2013 is that he got the very best treatment in Nebraska, and he was tested for all the AIDS-defining diseases with his own blood. I mean, there's no question it was his own blood. It didn't belong to a promoter, it didn't belong to Don King, it didn't belong to anybody, because there's always that thing, oh, well, it must have been somebody else's blood. A couple of brilliant doctors. One of them was this David Einspar. And, remember, I'm searching to see what's wrong with Tommy. If somebody can test positive on a test and then, negative on the test, positive, negative, which is what Tommy was being told all his, for those 10 dark years, what's wrong? And so this physician actually diagnosed Tommy with some autoimmune disorders. And autoimmune disorders are not contagious in the ring, but they will trigger a false positive, right? Okay. And he was diagnosed with Coombs positive, hemolytic anemia. And in 2019, this is 6 years after Tommy died, of septic shock, septicemia, and cardiac arrest, there's actually a science paper on false positives with people that have Coombs positive testing. So had he been tested, in Nevada, say the test really existed and say it really was an HIV test, had he been tested for a false positive, they would have come up with that. So basically, you're kicking somebody out of boxing for being anemic, right?
Right.
And that's why,
at the end of the day,
when you ask me what do I hope to gain out of this, is that the commission now know that people can test false positive on tests, whether they use Quest or not. Right. Scientifically, it can be done. There is no reason for anybody else to ever be kicked out on a false positive. So, yeah, that's one of the reasons.
How is it okay that other people knew before he did? I mean, how is that even?
Yeah, that's unheard of. Yeah.
Like he's being told by other people. I just don't understand the whole. In your own opinion, okay, what do you feel is behind all this? Like, do you think he was railroaded? Do you think he, I mean, what do you think? Why did this happen?
There's several reasons. I don't speculate, right?
Right. I just, okay. You don't want to speculate. I got you.
No, I don't want to. There's always there's a couple of pieces missing of the puzzle. I mean, even though we're at where we're at after 10 years, just something really bizarre happened at the beginning of February. I was sent a cease and desist letter. Right.
Okay.
Right. Remember, I am the widow. Tommy was my husband. I lawfully was Tommy's wife. I'm allowed to talk about my husband. I'm allowed to show medical records. If anybody's allowed to show them, it's me. I'm allowed to show people and tell them where to look for publicly available documents like I've just shown you, court documents, right? So why on earth would I receive a cease and desist from Tony Holden?
Wow.
So what was this?
Because he's the biggest piece of shit in this entire fucking story.
He's scared.
Like, being the outsider guy, there's a name that keeps coming up, and this Tony Holden guy, I'm not a big fucking fan of him. He sounds like a real big bag of shit.
Tony, we have to look into this guy, man.
What's Tony Holden besides my nuts? You know what I mean?
Exactly. What these?
So Tony Holden gets an attorney, and this is really bizarre because this just gave me more information.
Right.
Tony Holden, along with some other members of those that are in ESPN, gathered together. So I call it Tony Holden et al., right? Mm-hmm. They get this attorney. He sends me a cease and desist. So basically to stop me doing interviews, like even with you guys, right?
Oh, good. I hope Tony Holden brings his shit to me. Fuck you, Tony Holden.
So great.
You fucking cunt.
On the letter, I look for the attorney's address or phone number or fax number or email, and there's nothing on there. So I have to Google it to find out where this Luke from Stuart Clover comes from. So I Google it, and while I'm Googling, I find that the very same group of attorneys is representing Tony Holden in a lawsuit where Tony Holden is a defendant. So basically that it led me to, I guess, uncover an active lawsuit, which is the Peoria tribe of Indians of Oklahoma. So the Native American Indians that owned...
Everybody's pissed off at this guy.
that owns Buffalo Run Casino, which is where Tony Holden was doing all his fights and also managing that casino. And it's the Peoria tribe that is suing Tony Holden for $2.1 million of misappropriation of funds, right?
We're just going to go ahead and wrap this Tony Holden thing up. This guy's a piece of shit. If you come across Tony Holden anywhere in your life, it might not be the same guy. If his name is Tony and his last name is Holden, walk the fuck away from this guy, all right?
So, and he will be watching this because I will put this out there.
Hi, Tony. Your mother's a cunt.
But it wasn't necessary to send me a cease and desist. But you know what? I responded, and so did my attorney respond. And basically,
I need
said,
the number of your attorney before the end of the show. Just saying.
And basically, I said to the attorney, I would be quite happy to include a post-mortem, an ante-mortem, showing that Tommy had HIV/AIDS and died of HIV/AIDS. Please show me, and I'd be quite happy to include that with the ones that I have. And, please also show me that you tested him for Coombs positive and other autoimmune disorders. Please also tell me who told you to tell Tommy that he had HIV in Vegas when the guy you're telling 164 million ESPN viewers that it was Mark Ratner in Nevada that told you, when Mark Ratner is saying in court records he never told you. Please tell me all that information, and I will be happy as the wife and widow and executrix of the estate of Tommy Morrison to show it in this next interview. And in fact, you can come on the interview with me and let's do this together. Right. And I never heard anything back. So that was
the
the
truth
piece
doesn't
of the
hide.
puzzle.
That's why you were out there and he's hiding.
Yeah.
He's
and
he's
he's, you know, and it's
what is Tony
such a
Holden's
shame.
profession? What is Tony Holden's profession?
He's a boxing promoter.
Okay,
He
so
still
he's
is
not a
boxing
fucking
promoter.
doctor. He's not a lab technician.
No, right.
I'm
That's
pretty
correct.
sure
He's not.
HIPAA, like there's HIPAA laws. I can't
That's what I
call
understand.
Vinny or Gio tomorrow and be like, hey man, you got chlamydia. How do you know? I don't know. I just saw it in your face last
heard
night.
from
Like, I
class.
can't do that.
He sounds like basically a carnival barker.
Right.
yeah, like I don't.
Yeah, but I mean that's a big problem. So yeah, but it, you know what? It's caused a problem because ESPN is out there with that narrative, and then you've got the spin-offs on YouTube where they take snippets of that ESPN, and then they have millions and millions of hits, and then yet if we put ours out on YouTube, we may get 100 hits, right? Because of the algorithm that's used.
Exactly.
And, you know, it's a tough fight, but.
Go ahead. I just want to say, there's a story out there that, you know, Magic Johnson reached out to him and said, hey, man, you need to start taking this drug. And so is that accurate? Is that part? Are some things they cover in that show accurate? Like, did Magic Johnson really come to him and say, hey, man, you need to take this? And he was like, fuck you, I don't have AIDS, or what?
Right. Well, you know, you got to remember that at the beginning, Tommy was told he had HIV, right? You know, 26 years old, he's a boxer, but he's still, you know, intelligent, but knew nothing about, you know, medical stuff or HIV AIDS. So as far as Magic Johnson was concerned with Tommy, they tried to work together on a few things, but then Tommy started to do his own research. Tommy started to wake up every day saying, well, you know, if I'm supposed to be dying, why do I feel so good? And, you know,
I'm not.
Whoops.
Yeah.
You know, and then, you know, you're trying to feed me with these drugs, and what they're doing is they're making me sick. So I actually tried to get through to Magic Johnson when Tommy died as well. And again, no return of phone call. It's just really bizarre, right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
We're not really known for return phone calls.
Yeah, you know,
It's bizarre.
Yeah, it's just like he passes and then everybody just goes into hiding. It just says a lot. It just says a lot. And like I said, they were just expecting it to go away as you said, the narrative on ESPN, and just so let it go away like that. And then, you know, they weren't expecting you. And now here we are. But and I'll give you an example of that stigma is that so when we finally said, okay, you're coming onto the podcast, right? I went on to TikTok and I made a little commercial about it, right? On my TikTok page. Right. The first comment on there was obviously from a person who's not educated on the situation. And he said, oh, great fighter, but, and then the typical, you know, partying and this killed him and he got AIDS and he died. And I said, actually, you're wrong. Why don't you tune in to the show? And, you know, and there were a few people that I had to ask, tune in and see, you know, the truth.
But that's the world we live in.
One guy argued with me.
You tune in and watch fucking ESPN and you watch this fucking 30 for 30 or whatever documentary or maybe it's Netflix. I'm not pigeonholing ESPN. I'm just saying, you know, nobody does research anymore. Nobody, like Trisha, you're a fucking
I know you're like a detective or something.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Every woman's a fucking detective. You know what I mean?
It's in the DNA.
But literally, they're just people that go through life and they're like, oh, Tommy Morrison had AIDS, he died of AIDS, blah blah, whatever, blah blah, and just move
constantly.
on. When there's a real fucking story here, this is real.
Right.
This is real shit. Conspiracy theory, whatever you want to call it, whatever it is, it's real shit. It's proven shit that the layperson, just middle America, is just like, oh yeah, Tommy, yeah, he had AIDS.
Yeah.
It's not true.
Facebook page, the Real Hemlock, there was a guy that had said something to say. It's just everybody has that ESPN influence.
Yeah.
But you know what's exciting is that, okay, it's taken almost 10 years, is that there's people like you now out there, you know, like Sean
McFadden. Yeah, forget it.
And, you know, that's one thing that Tommy said to me, you know, one night, just totally out of the blue, you know, I fought for my fans. Would they fight for me? And I couldn't think what he was talking about. Why would he even come out with something like that? But he knew then, well before he even died, that it would be his fans that would be fighting for him, not the media, but that it would be fan
It's
journalism.
so true, though, because, you know, Sean is like a huge fan, and if it wasn't for Sean, I wouldn't have known the truth about it. I really wouldn't have. I would have just went on. Like, I knew there was some speculation behind it, but I never knew that it was settled. I never knew that. And then Sean came along, and now me and you guys, and it'll continue, you know.
You would think that people would be happy to know that.
That's what I wanted to tell you. Somebody wanted to argue with me about this on TikTok, and I said to them, well, why don't you come on the show then?
They don't want the good story.
I said, and tell his wife, because she seems to think otherwise. This is what I tell the guy, right?
Right.
You know, like, if you know so much about Tommy, come tell his wife this. And he said, he refused to come on. He had his. I don't need to.
He was predetermined based on shit he's been fed by the media.
Made up on what ESPN had said, and you know, he's probably not married. He doesn't realize how much a wife could actually find out.
Obviously he's single for a reason.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to show you some other faces of some other physicians. You know, these aren't TikTok people, right? These are real physicians. And they found in order to have AIDS, you have to have PCP, which is pneumocystis carinii pneumonia, right?
Okay.
That's as per Dr. Fauci. All right. So there's this one doctor here, Dr. Rad, and there was no PCP. Then you've got Dr. Nakamoto and no PCP. You've got Dr. Dugan Quest. In Tommy's blood, P24 and P18 were absent. You need those two things to have HIV. No Legionella, no pneumococcus by Dr. Cooley. And these are all opportunistic infections. Here, no mycobacteria. That's Jason Carey, who's an RN. Then you've got Dr. Gannison. Dr. Gannison, who also tested him, who was the doctor of record at the hospital in Nebraska, no PCP. Then you've got Dr. Manasek, no PCP. You've got Dr. Noy, no JVD, right? You know, I'm not talking.
And these are all things that would have, somebody with HIV would take them out. It would end their life.
Would have,
right?
would have AIDS. And then Dr. Silenix, who even checked his macrophages, which is a bronchial, and there were no viruses, no malignant cells. Then here, Dr. Rosenberger, she checked his pleural fluid, no malignant cells, right? No respiratory virus, as per Dr. Fiedler. You know, these are physicians, right? Dr. Jenny Hahn, she tested him for a whole bunch of stuff, but yes, she found he was hemolytic anemic. Which means that you can test false positive.
You can throw up all those pictures you want, but none of those people are Tony Holden. He's a boxing promoter. He's clearly more fucking...
He's more educated on this.
Clearly more fucking certified than any of these people.
Unbelievable.
What a crazy, crazy fucking... Wow. I'm so... I've never been happier in my life interviewing someone than right now, just because it's so much bullshit brought to the table.
But the fact that everything you show is fact, and that's what I like about you. Like, you're not willing to speculate. You back up every word you say with documentation.
You know what proof points? Documents.
All I have to say to Stezo is John McAfee.
Well, I have interviewed John McAfee, the creator of McAfee antivirus, but this is okay. You're equal.
So what I always ask is that at the end of each interview is please get it out there.
Right.
We can talk about it, but we have to reach 164 million people who have a completely different narrative as per Tony Holden et al. Right. So I need your help.
As of now, has anybody anywhere on television or anything heard any response from Don King or any word on Don King about Tommy?
Have you gotten any response?
I haven't seen any interviews.
Have you gotten any response from anyone?
You never hear anybody talk on him. Any of those top guys, you just never hear it. It's like they want it to go away.
Yeah, they do. They want this to go away.
Right.
So no.
No. Yeah, I'm just curious. I figure even a news reporter or something. But
it's strange because
those don't exist anymore. They go out with an agenda. I got to cover this.
The other night, I got an email from somebody that was a huge fan of Tommy's, and he is way up there in the media, right?
Oh, okay.
And has about 3.3 million followers, right? Which would be a good start. And he now knows the true story. So it is going to get out there. You can't keep pushing the truth down. It's getting out there, and it's actually fun now. Watching people actually have a discourse on Facebook or Messenger saying, no, that's not true. And then they'll put a link out there and say, okay, watch this, or pull up your own records from the court. So
now I'm going to use this interview.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, I spoke to her. Hold on.
Trisha, if I was not the CEO of Lose the Radio and a podcast producer, I would be remiss if I didn't ask this question. Do you do your own podcast or no?
No, like my own?
Yeah,
no.
Okay. We'll talk after the show.
I think what Steve was asking you is, do you want a highway to disperse
if you would like
information?
to do your own podcast weekly, I will produce the shit out of that.
Oh, would you? Okay.
Absolutely. Free of charge. You have to upgrade your equipment, move up from the Android phone to a computer, but we can work on that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're definitely social media. Who knows what's going to happen with TikTok, right? With everything going on. But I had an interview earlier today, and he is the youngest boxing media person out there. He's age 17.
Oh, wow.
And, so the next generation are going to know the truth because Tommy Gunn, Tommy Morrison, Rocky V is every Christmas it's out there, right?
Yeah.
So people can't forget Tommy, right?
Right.
And it's just sad that you've still got people that when you watch them on ESPN that are not physicians that still want to push the narrative out there that he was promiscuous, died of HIV/AIDS when he didn't.
Even if he's promiscuous, I hate when people say that.
So
word. He was promiscuous. You know what? I bartended when I was 22. What? Everyone's promiscuous when you're young. You're fucking
your
famous,
20s.
dude. Do your thing, but don't false diagnose somebody with something they don't have.
How hard would it be? I mean, have you ever been approached to do a documentary of your own to put the word out there? Right? Like to go.
I mean, it's not like Stezo and I happen to know a documentarian.
Right. have you ever?
I do happen to know some guy who has some video equipment.
Yeah.
But like, do your own documentary, like, or have like nobody's ever reached out to you to get.
Right. Oh, absolutely. People have reached out, but you know what? If we had done a documentary back when Tommy died, I would never have found out all this information that I just showed you, right? I mean, I would never have even known that I would have got a cease and desist letter from trying to talk about my husband, right?
It's just crazy. Yeah.
Fuck you, Tony Holden, you piece of shit.
So, I just feel there's a couple more things that will come out of the woodwork, right? And then it will be time to do a documentary. When Tommy and I went to see The Fighter, the movie The Fighter, the Mickey Ward one.
Yeah, great movie.
And Tommy looked at me. He said, that's a great story, but my story's better than that. And he said, promise me that when we do my story, that it will tell the good, the bad, the ugly, and the whole truth, right? And I said, yeah, I promise. I said, but your story's not finished yet. And it wasn't finished back then. And it's almost at a point where we're getting there now to do a documentary.
Oh,
so to answer the question, there will be a documentary. It needs to be done with people that really want to get it out there.
Yeah, some good people.
Yeah, Tommy's best interests at heart.
Every one of those pictures you showed on camera needs to be in that documentary.
Yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The faces, too, those doctors.
Faces, the words, the results, everything.
Yeah. And for every face that I put up there, I have the backup to it.
Right.
The test
it's
results.
all facts.
Right.
Mm-hmm. All documented by the courts.
You have your circle. The boxing world has their circle. Whatever they tried to pin on Tommy or fuck Tommy over back then, they had their circle, and now you have your circle. And I think your circle will triumph over there.
Those Tommy's fans, it's the fighters, man. You know,
Tommy's gonna get in there.
Tommy, not gonna let that.
Tommy wins in the end, motherfuckers. What?
Oh, he will.
Yeah.
He will win in the end.
Steve, I'm just thinking we should share the story with a friend of ours. I don't like using his name, but it rhymes with Andy Barker, who does a lot of documentaries, and is located in the Midwest.
Oh, really?
Missouri, I believe.
But yeah, I mean, there's just now that you have all this info, it's such a better story and a better ending to a documentary. Like, just to have, like you said, if you did it back then, you wouldn't have had all this to offer.
And then another thing, a part of the story and the documentary is Tommy wanted necklaces with his ashes put in them, right? And he never wanted to be buried, have a grave or anything like that. So there was a little bit of confrontation over Tommy's ashes, but I was accused of selling Tommy's ashes on eBay, right, by some of his family members. Just totally outrageous. That I even went to eBay legal department and had them show proof that I'd never even been on eBay to buy anything, let alone sell ashes, right? But right now, I've got the boxing gloves on order. They're being engraved, and professionally, his ashes will be put in there, and they will be given, not sold, to a short list of people that will wear him wherever they go, right? Almost like an angel, right, on their shoulders. And that's something that was out of the Rocky movie, right?
Can you put me on the list, because my girlfriend's batshit crazy over Tommy back in the day.
Wow.
But so that's
a great
going to be,
though.
And that's all part of the whole story, Tommy's story.
Yeah, I mean, as what was he like? As at home, just a regular guy. Like,
was
what did
he,
he like
was
to
he a
do?
smart ass? Was he cutting jokes all the time?
Did like to watch, Married with Children?
You know what? He loved to watch Fox News, right, at that time.
Okay, yeah,
And
that's big.
he would take care of his car. If there was any fuse to be changed in his car or the light or anything, he'd be out there for hours trying to fix that. And remember, he had chunky fingers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Broken fingers from all the fights. He was just so funny. And he loved animals. We had our own puppy called Dookie Duke, a boxer puppy, and he just was full of fun. He just wanted to be normal.
Yeah.
He wanted to be normal, and so I made him take out the garbage, right? And he cooked. There was one time we had bought a George Foreman grill, right? And,
hard times, huh?
yeah. And it was just a little teeny blue
That's
George
so
Foreman
great.
grill.
Yeah.
And then we went to the store and we saw Tyson chicken. It was a brand called Tyson chicken. So he laughed at that, and we came back home.
For the record, it's not Mike Tyson. Tyson chicken. It's just a big corporation in the South. Trust me.
So here we are in our little kitchen, and you've got Tommy Morrison, right, with the George Foreman grill, and inside the grill is Tyson chicken, right? And he looked at me. He said, "You know what? I'm going to win this one, right?" And it was just hilarious. But he had such a great sense of humor. All kinds of stuff. I mean, he told me all kinds of stories. In the years that we were together, he did drug rehab, and he was so happy to do that. He had failed so many times, but he did that, and he was not a drinker. In fact, in the years that we were together, he had one White Russian and didn't even finish that. He loved milk, and he would eat salads. He said, he would always say, "Trisha, you are what you eat," right?
So don't be cheap, easy, or fast.
Right, yeah.
If you are what you eat, don't be cheap, easy, or fast.
Yeah. And he would just be a good soul. And, he didn't deserve any of this.
Right, and that's the thing, too. Like, you look at the belts behind you, and, I can never imagine being a world champion as a fighter, just let alone...
You can't be a world champion as a husband. What
at
are you
anything.
talking about?
But just to make it to... a lot of people don't realize that 1% of the people that walk into the doors of a boxing gym, only 1% of them turn pro. And out of that 1%, only 1% becomes the heavyweight champion of the world. So think about that. And now this man that worked that hard to get where he was, has been disgraced by the people who were supposed to be bringing him to even further. I mean, just to make his legacy even stronger than it was. I mean. Now, from this point, where do we go as far as his legacy? He has a son that fights. Is his son? Yeah. Yep, Kenzie, right?
Yep, Kenzie. Yep, and he's such a good kid. He was always there for his dad, and would call us and come by, and he loved his dad, and his dad loved him very much. So, if you ever speak to Kenzie, he walks and talks like his dad, and he has his dad's heart. So as far as the boxing goes, hopefully he'll carry on the legacy. But
I hope
Kenzie
so.
will definitely get all these belts anyway. When the time comes, it'll be passed down to him. Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah, I saw him recently on TikTok. Believe it or not, he has his own page on there. So I started following him on there, but I didn't know he was on there. So, but he looks so much like his father. It's like
yeah.
And hopefully he's got the same left hook.
Yeah, he has. Yeah, Tommy trained him.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, when Kenzie came up to stay with us in in Kansas, he trained him in the gym, and he was just blown away by his son's power.
I bet.
And he said
Good
he's
genetics.
a natural. Yeah.
Well, I hope to see him go on to greatness, man. That'd be
Yeah.
something, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Something.
the world of boxing is pretty hard out there.
I
You've got
know.
YouTubers out there that are earning millions, and then the boxers are earning just 10,000,
10,000 if you're not in the top tens or the top 5. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So it's tough, but
Yeah.
I can't believe you came on here. I'm just so grateful to have you on here with us and to get the story out.
Blown.
Yeah, it's such a great story, and I've always been a fan, and boxing's been a part of my life since I was a kid. So it's just something, and it still is. So this is important to me, and it was important to meet you and to get that out there, man, because I'm a fan.
Well, what Gio doesn't say too is you talk about the next generation of boxing.
Yeah.
In Gio's fight camp includes 2 8-year-old girls who are really doing well.
One of them's my daughter.
Yeah.
So he's training the next generation now.
I am, and they're going to know about Tommy Morrison, and they're going to know the real story about Tommy Morrison, and and they'll spread it in other gyms and to their friends, and on and on. So the truth will be told, and eventually it'll be when somebody says, "Oh, Tommy Morrison," they'll say, "Oh, remember when people thought he died of HIV?" And that's what it'll be. Yeah. Everybody will know the truth.
That's right. Yeah, it has become a very important mission to Tommy's fans to get the truth out there, which is really nice because you just don't feel alone anymore fighting for him. Definitely got a lot of people doing that now, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of people, and there's so many other avenues that you could be taking to, and I really hope that the documentary comes out and just I hope that smash ESPN in it.
I hope it kicks the boxing world right in the teeth, just to show you how shady fucking some people can be.
Well, boxing is just so.
I understand this comes down to a sport, but it also comes down to how disrespectful and shady some people in your life can be.
And the thing in boxing is people need to realize too is there's the sport and the fighters, right? And then there's the business and the sport and the fighters and the science of, it's a beautiful thing. The people, everybody I've ever met, every fighter I've ever met, I love them all, right? And then there's the business, and the business is scary,
what fucks up the fucking sport.
Dirty, and it fucks up the sport constantly. And there's so many people who spend their lives getting to where Tommy Morrison was, only to get the shaft, or just before they get to that point, they get the shaft because they're not the right this or that, or maybe they don't sell certain amount of seats or whatever the reason. I don't, it's a dirty business, but I just think people should always remember that the fighters are not the business aspect. No. They're different.
The promoters are the devils.
Pretty much.
In the details.
In this case, I don't know. There's a lot of devils in this case. It's like, it comes, I can't imagine where it all began as far as how this started. Was it an idea? Was it a Rome?
Well,
it all began in Rome.
As soon as they started printing money and paying each other for events, that's where the devil came into.
Where there's money, there's corruption.
Absolutely.
And the circus that these people have put on, that you have exposed. I mean, it's a circus when you really think about it. I said he has it. Oh, I didn't say he has it. Oh, he said that. He said that. It's just a bunch of finger pointing and dodging the bullet.
Right.
And yet nobody's in trouble because money talks.
Yeah. Just
at the end of the day, it's a billion. That's boxing though. It's money.
Yeah.
But you did it. Regardless, you proved it. So it's proved.
Not only did you do it, and you're still doing it. You're not gonna let this rest. You are the ultimate widow. You are the
Right.
epitome of love. You are not going to let
Yeah,
your
a wonderful wife,
husband's
man.
fucking name die in vain.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah. We scientifically proved it, and for it not to be out there,
hmm
with the media, that goes to show we really did prove it, right?
yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to show us the truth.
That's not what they're all
That's
about.
boring.
Well,
Yeah.
they would show you the truth if you could afford to buy the truth.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Insect bites
There's a
don't
huge difference.
sell Tide.
Yeah, right.
That's
Yeah.
the bottom line.
There's money
Yeah.
behind that shit.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So anybody that's listening that still doesn't believe everything that I've shown you, then you're very welcome to email me a post-mortem, an antemortem that shows Tommy had HIV/AIDS, and you're very welcome to email me all the tests that you did on my husband, right, that showed he had AIDS. And then I'll take a look at it, right? But right now, what you've seen is what exists.
You
And
have
that is no
documents.
HIV.
You have done your fucking research. You have your work. You've shown us everything on the show. I am 100% in the camp of Team Tommy.
Oh yeah.
He was shafted 100%. There's some shady shit. Whatever that guy's name, Tony, whatever.
I mean, this is like a movie.
Still,
It's like
that Tony guy can still go fuck himself.
my goodness.
And just me personally, we'll wrap up here soon. Me personally, I'll let the boys on that end wrap it up. But I thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on here and bringing all this shit to the table, because I don't trust media. I trust what comes out of your mouth and things that you've showed me, as opposed to something that someone on a network that's being paid millions of dollars to produce this bullshit tells me. And that's where we are in social media these days. So thank you, Gio, Mike, Vinny. You guys take it over.
Yeah, thank you so much. Very informative. The room was very much enjoying it.
Yeah, a lot of people they liked it. Yeah, and I thank you so much for coming on here. And like Sean McFadden, he always tells you, he's like, as a fighter, he's like a brother. That's the truth.
Yeah.
So you'll never, as long as I know, as long as Sean McFadden or myself is in the gym, you'll never hear a bad word on Tommy Morrison. We'll make sure the story gets out. Because, like I said, that's how I found out from Sean.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're welcome back anytime if there's any information you want to get out.
Yeah, anything new, anything, please.
Yeah, that would be great. And again, I really appreciate it. That was just such a nice message to receive from you, that you wanted to fight with me on this. And I've loved being on your show today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
We only lack one thing.
Bye.
Bye.